They're decorated military officers who have protected our country. So why do they claim the military is forcing them out?
Well, they say it's because they are women, and that's what our 11 News investigators found might be happening in the Texas Air National Guard. Investigative reporter Mark Greenblatt is here with more about a possible sex discrimination scandal in the making.
Greg, Len, they're trained, they've served, and some have even fought to protect our country. But now, all these Texas Air National Guard women say that they want to know is why they're being humiliated and pushed out by their male commanders.
My grandfather was in for 42 years.
For as long as she can remember.
My dad was in for 23.
That was in Germany.
Service was the most important thing in Adrienne Bell's family, so she enlisted with the Texas Air National Guard. And one day, she was invited to a mostly male leadership camp.
It's the transition training from being a follower into a leader.
But what she saw happen to a fellow female airman,
I guess perhaps found her a little too outspoken,
has shaken her belief in the Texas Guard.
I can't believe they're actually doing this.
This was the Vagisil Award, a crown with the Vagisil label and military fatigues pasted on it. A crown a group of instructors forced the young woman to wear.
All three of them lined up in front of her, bowed down onto one knee as you would before royalty, and presented her with a tube of Vagisil.
So why the so-called award? Bell says the military leader in charge of the camp joined the ceremony, announcing that
she whined and bitched about everything.
She says the effect was devastating.
When we got back to our room, she was crying, physically ill.
And to this day, it angers her.
I was very offended.
Women in service, they train, they fight, and they sometimes die to protect our country. But 11 News Investigates has discovered that in the Texas Air National Guard, instead of always honoring these warriors, a mostly male leadership may be simply driving them out.
It makes no sense to me.
Meet Colonel Sue Heckinger. She was at Ellington Field when her country asked for volunteers for duty in Iraq.
I was a wing commander in a wartime environment.
She helped lead America's air and troop movements there.
I was responsible for thousands of troops.
And for her service, received this Bronze Star.
We did the mission. We saved lives.
But when she returned to Ellington and the Texas Guard, a boss she had only met twice, Colonel Lanny McNeely, actually complained about her absence in this evaluation, saying she left the mission support group adrift during her long absence.
And what is the effect of that piece of paper on your career?
Oh, it was a career killer.
So someone who's met you now 2 times
Correct.
is all of a sudden evaluating you with a horrible performance report.
Correct.
While all the while you've been overseas.
Correct.
Serving your country.
Yes.
I'm hurt and I'm angry.
Rita Godot served for 33 years.
It was blatant discrimination.
And with 2 master's degrees and 3 national awards.
I was the top recruiter in the nation.
But she says Ellington's top boss, McNeely, had a problem with diversity.
He went as far as telling me he did not want me to use that word in his presence.
Diversity.
Diversity was something he didn't like, he didn't believe in it, and don't use the word around me.
But Godot says it didn't surprise her.
If you look at the stats, you will see it's blatant.
And indeed, this report from the National Guard shows at Ellington, 5 colonels run the base, and underneath them, 24 lieutenant colonels. 28 of them are men. And the one woman, she's part of this joint congressional complaint alleging discrimination and the relegation of females to second-class citizens. And Godot,
I got crushed,
says she too was driven out and is now part of that congressional complaint.
I'll tell you, if I were a senior airman, I'd be thinking twice before I put in a complaint in the Texas Air National Guard.
Colonel Jill Collins.
They're not ever going to promote him, or they're going to demote him.
She investigated discrimination complaints.
That's called retaliation.
Collins was part of the senior leadership team at Guard headquarters and says little has changed.
The cases that I investigated 10, 20 years ago are still happening today.
Part of the problem? She says it's a resistance to change.
Women are a very huge part of our fighting forces, and it's about time that they stop being discounted and discredited.
One airman was given this tiara to wear and awarded the Vagisil Award. In your estimation, is this okay in today's Guard?
General Charles Rodriguez is head of the Texas Guard.
Anything that would demean an individual upon investigation will be dealt with very severely.
But what about the lack of women leaders?
Not a single female has ever been brought before the board to be even considered for the position of general on the Air Guard side.
In order to be considered for general, there are certain requirements to include schooling and to include command time.
So what about Colonel Hechinger? America's top 2 Air Force generals in the Iraq War called her an exceptional leader, extraordinary diplomat, consummate warfighter, and even an exceptional team builder.
What is it about those kinds of qualifications that might not qualify her to be brought before a board and considered to be a general?
She's a qualified Air Force officer.
But she was never brought before a board to be considered for the position of general.
At this point, what I'd like to do is let you know that another consideration, in addition to schooling and experience, is performance. And I will stop there.
She's a Bronze Star winner.
I will stop there.
But in the end, it all leaves women like Rita Godot feeling dismissed.
It's the culture of the Air National Guard.
Now tonight, the Guard tells us that apparently this was not the first time that the Vagisil Award was given out, but says it will be the last, calling the whole incident deplorable. We're told several senior instructors have already been reprimanded. Now, we did seek comment from Colonel McNeely of the Guard, but he declined, citing a pending investigation into some of the allegations, an investigation ordered by General Rodriguez. For now, if you'd like to read the Guard's full response or learn more about the women you just heard from tonight, just log on to khou.com. I'm Mark Greenblatt, 11 News Investigates.
Pressure is on tonight as a member of Congress calls for swift change and better treatment of women in the Texas Air National Guard. It's happening in response to an 11 News investigation revealing allegations of sexual discrimination against some of the Guard's most accomplished women. But first, investigative reporter Mark Greenblatt joins us with a breaking development on this story tonight. Mark?
Len, call it a possible victory for women. Just days after we aired our first story in this investigation, the Texas Air Guard now says it's promoting a woman to one of the most powerful positions at Ellington Field, that of command chief. But it's a move that comes too little too late for one member of Congress who's calling for even more widespread change tonight.
Essence stopped in their tracks by retaliation, discrimination, sexism. That's wrong.
Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee
Now you're crossing the line.
is talking about what our investigation revealed.
This needs to be addressed in Washington.
The issue? Sexual discrimination against women in the Texas Air National Guard.
It disturbs me.
Take Colonel Sue Hechinger.
I was a wing commander in a wartime environment.
She left from Ellington to help lead America's air and troop movements in the recent Iraq War.
We did the mission. We saved lives.
For her service, she received this Bronze Star, and America's top Air Force generals in Iraq called her an exceptional leader, extraordinary diplomat, consummate warfighter, and even an exceptional team builder.
The team, the troops, were the heroes.
But when Hechinger returned to Ellington, a boss she had met only twice, Colonel Lanny McNeely, complained about her absence in an evaluation, saying she left the mission support group adrift during her long absence.
And what is the effect of that piece of paper on your career?
Oh, it was a career killer.
The colonel was in battle, in combat, in theater, fighting for her country. The very fact that there is language in there that says adrift during your long absence has to be removed.
But Jackson Lee's upset about another case.
I believe the system is very broken.
Major Val Ross.
I felt that the nation was under attack.
Educated at Johns Hopkins. She was a civilian medical doctor when 9/11 happened.
And I felt that, I needed to get back in.
So she abandoned her practice and enlisted in the Texas Air National Guard. Her job? Making sure Ellington's pilots were fit to fly. But she says one pilot refused to see her.
I really felt there was a risk to flying safety that was going on if we had an aviator in the wing who felt that he could make his own rules.
So who was that pilot? Colonel Lanny McNeely, her commander.
It eventually came to a crisis point. I was forced to ground Colonel McNeely.
And then she too left for Iraq. And when she got back, she decided to resign and go back to being a civilian.
Colonel McNeely had to sign a form stating that that he approved my resignation. And when he signed that form, He circled a box that said I was unfit for continued military duty.
And that doesn't make Jackson Lee happy.
That is retaliation with a big R. This clearly was done in order to intimidate.
And she says,
I can't imagine that we could keep a commander who creates this kind of atmosphere.
Which is why she's now calling for an investigation by the federal government.
Let it be very clear, the Texas Air National Guard has not heard the last from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
The Texas Guard says at this time it doesn't have a response to the Congresswoman or have anything else to say about that joint complaint against Ellington's commander and his superiors. As for that newly promoted female command chief, well, she'll eventually oversee every non-commissioned officer at Ellington Field. I'm Mark Greenblatt, 11 News Investigates.